my whiskey clear. Nick Ferguson, you know that song.
Yes, I do know that song. I'm surprised that
I know that song.
Yes.
Like, how cool am I? So let me give you a little debriefing. So I used to work at CNN in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I used to be good friends with Bobby Cremins. Well, I still am.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, back then, I was really good friends with him. And I used to do his basketball camp. I'm a baller. So I played ball my whole life. I went to Indiana. I worked with Bob Knight. Remember the crazy old basketball coach?
Yes.
So I knew Bobby. I knew all the coaches. And I've been doing this for 40 years, so I'm an old man, and I know everybody. But I knew Bobby. So Bobby used to take me to his Georgia Tech basketball camp for the kids because I'm crazy and funny, and the kids love me and the players. And so, yeah, and then he'd take me to his Georgia Tech luncheons for the, boosters and all the people that donate money to the school and to the athletic program. And I've been friends with him forever. And so when I went to these events, they would bring like the band and the cheerleaders and the yellow jacket mascot, right? And then they would say, around, George, you're taking a hell of an engineer. So he wrote me in. And then once I got it and learned it, so now I do like sportscasts all the time. I'm on in New York, I'm on everywhere, but I do, whenever I give a score, like last night I bet on them and they won in like overtime. And I don't just give the score, I go, I'm around Georgia, taking a hell of an engineer, and I drink my whiskey clear. Every single time I mention Georgia Tech in the last 40 years, I'm a rambling rag from Georgia, taking a hell of an engineer. I do it every time.
Yeah.
It drives people nuts, but it doesn't drive you nuts because you went there.
Yeah, and I know the song.
So now you have to be like educated. Like when you go to Georgia Tech, it's no joke. Like, even if you're playing football there, like today, no one goes to class. no one goes to class. They get paid $1 million to play football.
Yeah.
Back when you played, you actually had to go to class.
Yeah.
Am I tripping?
No, you're not.
You had to learn something.
You actually had to learn.
Or they would throw you out.
Yes.
You'd lose your scholarship.
Absolutely.
Nowadays, if you don't go to class, you're rewarded. They probably give you a Beamer or a Bentley.
Yeah, exactly.
And a stack of money. And that's some bullshit. I don't like it. I think it's the worst thing that ever happened to college sports. It ruined it. When I went, I had to get an education. I went on a scholarship, and I had to get grades to live up to that scholarship. And now they just give these morons. So what they're doing is they're producing idiots. Am I wrong? Like, how many idiots now are playing in the NFL compared to when you played in the NFL, when guys actually may have pulled off a 2.5 or a 3.0 or a 3.5 or a 3.8. But if you didn't get that 2.0, you weren't playing football.
It's different because, once again, when you give it all this NIL money, obviously you incentivize it from a financial standpoint.
Right.
And those guys are like, well, why do I really have to go to class?
Right.
I'm getting paid this enormous amount of money. But you're right. The era then is different than what it is.
Now, how about this? They don't even have to go pro. Some of them make more money in college now than they would if they were a 4, 5, 6, 7 round pick. Like, they're going to make no money when you're a 7th rounder. You're going to make some money. Mm-hmm. I know how it works. I'm not stupid. So the NFL pay scale, 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round, down to the 7th round, is like from the penthouse to the outhouse, right? Like,
well, once again, it is that type of idea. But once again, we go back to the idea of how much money these guys are making. It's like, well, how can you, like, if you have kids, if you're telling your kids to constantly clean their room, but they're making more than you are as a parent, then your kid is like, well, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not cleaning my room.
It's the same thing with drugs.
Yes.
If you don't, I know you're working with Marshall Falk, my buddy, and he went to San Diego State. The only reason I mention that is because my son goes to San Diego State. And it's great weather, and there's gorgeous chicks in bikinis. I got to tell you, when I drop him off at school, I'm like, what is happening here? I got to get out of here. I'm going to get arrested. And I'm an old man. I'm creepy. Like, I'm 60. People are like, what's that old man doing here? I'm like, I'm looking at girls. Like, it's crazy. So he's cool. But, what you guys are doing for kids, like teaching them, showing them, hey, look, I'm going to show you a guy tweaking and tripping on drugs. You don't want to be a loser like this. it hits home with these kids as opposed to them listening to their stupid moronic friends who tell them to smoke weed or to do blow or to do meth or to do H or to accidentally do fentanyl and die.
Yeah.
Am I right?
No, you're absolutely right, and that's the thing. Like for me, even at Georgia Tech, I'm a visual learner.
Right.
You can tell me something, but I want to go ahead and see it. And
You got to see it.
Once you show kids the pamphlet, you show them the videos, you show them someone going through kind of a drug withdrawal,
Right.
then you hope that it impinges on them, and they go, you know what? I don't want that to be me.
Do you remember when you're growing up, when your parents used to say, I'm going to take you down to the police station and show you the jail and show you some of the overnight drunks in there sleeping and see if you want to live here one day. Yeah, remember that when they'd scare you?
I think they call that the Scare Straight program.
Right.
And the idea is once you take that philosophy, but you use it towards drugs.
Right.
And usually when you start showing kids these things, it starts making sense to them because for the most part, they thinking drugs, around drug paraphernalia. It's cool. You show them that it's not.
It's not cool. It's Loserville. Now, let me ask you, you're from Miami, and I lived in Miami, and I worked in Miami. I was on the Canes and Panthers and Marlins station for 30 years. My show was on there forever. I've been doing this 40 years. And so my radio show was on in Miami always, and then I lived there a couple times, and I had a place there for 50 years, and I would go down there in Boca, is where I stayed with all the rich idiots and losers. The asshats that live in Boca, the Beverly Hills type, right? Yeah. But I was a normal dude living on the Intercoastal, chilling the most, eating food, going to the pool, getting raised. But I'm a Canes fan. How did you leave Miami for Atlanta and Georgia Tech? Did you want to play for the Canes when you were a kid? What happened to you? Who brainwashed you?
Well, it wasn't a thing of being brainwashed. I wanted to go to my university in Miami, but I wanted to escape, and grow up. I wanted to kind of
experience the world.
Yeah, and get away from my parents. I wouldn't have been able to do
So you didn't love your parents is what you're saying to me.
I do. Every kid knows that there's certain times in your adolescence that you don't love your parents. But I wanted to get away. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see something different. And Georgia Tech was challenging within itself. But I'm not disappointed with my.
But you were more worldly when you tasted New York, with the Jets and Denver in the Mile High City, and then Houston. Let me ask you a question. When you lived in Colorado, did you ever notice that the noodles didn't boil the way they did in Miami? Like the tennis balls didn't bounce the way they did in Miami.
Yeah.
And when I went to Colorado for the first time skiing at like Breckenridge, I drank 6 beers and I vomited like I drank 24.
Because it's different.
Everything's different there. I think they're Martians. All those people there are Martians. I do not believe that they're normal.
Yeah.
I think they're on drugs. And I think that we need to scare the kids and show them people that eat noodles that don't cook right, bad tennis balls that don't bounce right, and beers that get you 3 times as effed up as one beer. It's just unbelievable. I think it's the worst thing that ever happened to the world, that state. There's something funny going on out there.
The same thing, too, is when you're baking pizza. It's so different. You got to set your temperature on your oven at a certain degree.
It's unbelievable.
Because of
Nick, I love you. Thanks for saving children and keeping them off drugs. You're a badass. You're a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on C2C.
Appreciate it.
My man.